since well before the war. I haven't left the city of Tehran since before the war, except for one day in Islamabad and on the way back because they were afraid to shoot down our plane because the Washington Post said they should kill the negotiators. So they landed in Mashhad near the border, and I took a train to Tehran. But other than that, I've been in Tehran. I haven't even left the city, so I don't plan to go anywhere.
Right. Well, uh, uh, thanks so much for joining. Everyone hit the like button. That helps boost the show in YouTube's algorithm. I wanted to begin, Professor Marandi, with the news that just came out over our favorite fake news site, Axios. And it's a report that the United States, Donald Trump, is saying Iran has downed a US Apache helicopter over the Strait of Hormuz. The AH-64 Apache helicopter went down on Monday night, overnight, and both crew members were rescued within 2 hours and are in stable condition. There was talks about drone technology having accomplished this rescue mission, and Iran is being said to have conducted this strike. Now, Professor Marandi, I wanted to ask you first your thoughts on this, but also how overall you're viewing the situation, because at this moment it appears the United States and Donald Trump is not prepared for actual peace, but is not prepared to escalate into a full-scale war either, especially since, and we haven't talked about this either, together the Iranian strikes on Israel for its aggression on Lebanon, and Israel and the U.S.'s retaliation, which also led to a very similar situation during the 12-day war, which was Donald Trump coming in, playing mediator, pretending to be mediator, and then there's now a quote-unquote cessation of hostilities on the Israeli side, and Iran's promise to continue hitting if the strikes on Lebanon continue, which it seems like they are. So your thoughts on this overall moment?
I think that we're seeing what we're witnessing is the United States carrying out aggression and destroying the global economy and slaughtering many thousands of people at the behest of the Israeli regime. And why is it doing it on behalf of the Israeli regime? Because they want to enable the Israeli regime to carry out its genocide in Gaza and now in Lebanon. Two theaters of genocide now, one in the south and one in the north. This is basically it. The United States wants to help the Israeli regime carry out its Greater Israel project to take territory from neighboring countries. They've already done it in Syria. The Al Qaeda regime in Syria has no problem. They have no will, no interest in taking back huge amounts of territory that the Israeli regime has taken. Their so-called jihad, these Wahhabi Salafis that have been working on behalf of the empire and funded by Qatar and the Saudis and others, they only kill Syrians. They don't have any interest in fighting the Israelis. In Lebanon, it's a different case altogether. The resistance is fighting back. And what the Americans want is Iran to stand silent and let them carry out the slaughter, just like in Gaza. They want the resistance and Iran, the axis of resistance, to stand back and let them finish off the Palestinian people. This is it, basically. This is it, Dan. This is all about genocide. Western journalists know it, Western diplomats know it, Western elites know it. They're supporting genocide. They're quiet about genocide. They want the Israeli regime to get away. Just a couple of days ago, they gunned down a 7-month-old infant in the West Bank. No reaction from the diplomats in Tel Aviv or Western diplomats. They participated in the gay whatever parade. What's it called? The Gay Pride Parade. But they don't say anything about the daily killings in the West Bank and the beatings and the theft. So this is the fight. It's between Iran, the axis of resistance, and the empire, and no one else wants to defend the Palestinian people. Erdogan continues to transport oil from Baku to his business partner Netanyahu, and he talks, about Palestine, and it's all fake. Sisi in Egypt purchasing gas from Netanyahu is his business partner there. Abdullah in Jordan, terrible proxy. When Iran was firing missiles, he was desperate, and drones, he was desperate to down them, and assist the Israeli regime. So, all of this axis of assistance, as I once called it a couple of years ago somewhere, this axis of assistance and the axis of resistance are two completely separate entities. Right now in Lebanon, we're also seeing the same thing. In Lebanon, you have a puppet government that was installed by the Americans and the Saudis. This puppet government, the president and the prime minister, they don't have a popular mandate. The votes that they got were far less than the Hezbollah-led coalition in the last parliamentary elections. But they were installed by force. What are they doing? They are preventing the refugees from southern Lebanon from going to different parts of the country, trying to use sectarianism and religion to create hate in Lebanon. They're encouraging different neighborhoods and different cities not to let the refugees in. Western embassies are pushing for this too. Western NGOs in Lebanon are pushing for this so they're cornering the supporters of the resistance in southern Lebanon who've lost their homes and their cars and their businesses. And then they prevent Iran or Iraq from giving any aid. We can't send tents. We cannot send, because the government in Lebanon wants to bring them to their knees, the resistance. They want to humiliate them, break them. And then, of course, they go and negotiate with the Israeli regime and give the biggest concession of all, direct negotiations, the greatest concession. What do they get in return? The Israelis bomb and kill a lieutenant general and two other people in his convoy. That's what you do. That's what happens when you kneel before the master. When you only get more punishment. He becomes more demanding. So Iran will not accept this state. And then you have Al Qaeda to the east, funded by Erdogan and the Arab regimes, another proxy of the United States, trying to shut the Lebanese border so that Hezbollah cannot get any aid from Iran. So they've surrounded these people. They collectively, the Wahhabis, the Salafis, the Zionists, the liberal-backed government in Lebanon, collectively, they're trying to crush the people of Lebanon. They're trying to break the back of the resistance. And Iran says, no, we're not going to let you do that. And so what was the plan? The Israeli regime said, we want to flatten Beirut. I mean, imagine, like someone said, we're going to flatten New York. It's like unbelievable how easy it is for them to say this, and no one responds in the West. You don't see Western members of parliament giving fiery speeches about crime, genocide and crimes against humanity. You don't see any congressmen you don't see Canadian journalists or British journalists or Australian journalists, no, except for alternative journalists and the good people who you and I know or know of. They're all indifferent. They all support it. They all try to create a narrative to justify it. The beheaded babies, the fake rape accusation. They used that for a full year or so, just to let the Israelis get away with the genocide. And now in Lebanon, whatever they bomb, they say Hezbollah strongholds, and then all we see is dead families and massacred families. But the West has to help the Israelis do what they want to do for the Greater Israel Project. This is where we are. And so the problem is that Iran and the axis of resistance says, no, the axis of assistance, they're with Americans, and the West is all for the genocide. It's as simple as that. And so the U.S. presence in the Persian Gulf, or in their bases and in these countries, they're all for the sake of Israel. This helicopter, I spoke to an Iranian military official, too, who also spoke to another official, both relatively senior. They told me that Iran had nothing to do with it. But that's not even the point. I mean, Iran is fully prepared for war. That's not even the point. The point is, why are American helicopters in the region? Why is the United States surrounded Iran? It is all to support ethno-supremacists. All your viewers have to know this. This is to support ethno-supremacists. Iran has been antagonized, the Islamic Republic of Iran, for 47 years because it supports the Palestinians, because it supports the Cubans, because it supported Southern Africa resistance against apartheid. That's the problem. That's a fundamental issue. And since the West is, since the U.S. ambassador said that the Israeli, his interview with Tucker Carlson said if the Israelis take the entire region, that's fine. This is what the battle is about. If Iran does not stand up to their expansionism, they will take Lebanon, they'll exterminate the population, they'll take Gaza, they'll take the West Bank, and they'll continue to move forward. So there's no other way forward. And if we do appease them, they'll just become more aggressive. So Iran is going to have to take a stand. If the United States strikes, Iran will strike back hard. If the Israeli regime continues the onslaught in southern Lebanon, Iran will strike back hard. And then, in addition to that, there will be no agreement unless the genocide in Gaza stops. Iranians have said that you have to implement that fake peace agreement. All those regimes of our region, Erdogan and Sisi and Abdullah and all the other, I should be careful about my wording, even though I'm not in government. All these traitors to the Palestinian cause, they went there, they whitewashed Trump, they endorsed his ceasefire, and since then over 1,000 Palestinians have been murdered, and they've done nothing. And now Netanyahu is taking more and more territory in Gaza. So what should Iran do? What should the axis of resistance do? They have no option but to remain steadfast.
Yeah, those are important points, Professor Marandi. And what is so suspicious about this Apache helicopter incident that Trump is referencing? And I'll just pull up one more time the Truth Social post. I didn't pull it up in full. I just read the way more intelligent drop site news, but this is the Truth Social post exactly. And he was informed by his great military, Trump Street military, as probably he was at the Knicks game, I guess. The Iranians shot down one of our highly sophisticated Apache helicopters patrolling the Strait of Hormuz. There are 2 pilots involved, yada, yada, yada. They're safe. The United States must respond to this attack. Now, the suspicious thing about this, Professor Marandi, is that it seems like the United States, Donald Trump, they're very keen on presenting certain events as Iranian hostility while hiding, for example, what Iran actually did during what Iran would consider its legitimate retaliation against Israel because of Israeli aggression on Lebanon. And I just want to pull up satellite imagery which shows that Ramat David Air Base, the air base that is responsible at least for the fighter jets that are flying out to strike Lebanon. There's quite a difference. I mean, I'm not a satellite technology expert, but there is a difference between the before and after, before and then after, likely some kind of missile drone related fire, rubble damage being presented there. So Donald Trump said that the missile attacks he told Israel, nothing was hit, everything's fine. You don't have to, please do not retaliate. That's been the narrative. Israel didn't listen anyway. But the point here is that there seems to be some selectivity going on in what is Iranian hostility and aggression and attacks on U.S. assets versus what Iran is actually doing, which has been downplayed from the very beginning. To me, that's suspicious. But what are your thoughts?
Well, since the beginning of the so-called ceasefire, the United States has repeatedly attacked Iran. So if the United States helicopter went into Iranian territory once again, I would, let's say if I was an Iranian soldier, I'd shoot it down. But the Iranians have not taken responsibility. Not now, not yet. Yesterday, no one said, the military never said we downed an American helicopter. So from what I've heard from people is that this was probably a mechanical failure. But the point is that it is the United States that repeatedly breaks the ceasefire, not Iran. And the war was carried out by the United States, an illegal and murderous war where they slaughtered 168 little kids on day one and murdered our leader on day one. All enormous violations of human rights. Trump threatened to wipe out the country, liberate the country, take us back to the Stone Age. erase our civilization. This is these are the monsters that we're dealing with. And of course, Western media is never outraged by this language. They never attack him for this. They attack him for, I don't know, for other issues at home, but obviously strangling Cuba and obliterating Iran, carrying out genocide in Gaza. These are not a part of the problem. It's about the elections in California, the accusations of fraud in the local elections. That's what stirs up anger among Republicans and Democrats. So my understanding, though, is that since the Iranians have not made any comments on this, they probably did not carry it out. But that's not really important. The United States has violated the ceasefire many times before, and they'll use this as an excuse to strike again, and Iran will hit back hard. But the question is that does Trump want to drag the world into a global economic depression? Because when the Israelis began striking Iran, when they hit a petrochemical plant, Iran hit back at an Israeli plant, but then it said, if this continues, we're going to destroy U.S. In the infrastructure in the Persian Gulf region that is linked to the Israelis and Americans. And of course, everything there is linked to the Israelis and Americans because their troops are there, American troops are there. In the case of the Emirates, Israelis are there. And so that would be an end to the global economy. Right now, as we all know, things are going downhill for the global economy. The estimates with regards to how fast things are going to get bad differ. Some say June is a transition month and things are going to get much worse soon in the coming days and weeks. Some say July. Some say by the end of September there'll be a catastrophic situation, and by the end of the year, some say depression, some say much earlier. I don't know. But what I do know is that Trump is pushing the world towards economic depression, and Iran is not going to back down. Iran is not going. What the Americans and the West want to happen is for Iran to forsake the Palestinians and the Lebanese, and that's not going to happen. They want to enable the Israelis to carry out ethnic cleansing and genocide in Lebanon, and to continue the ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza, and for the Iranians to have an agreement where they get a few $1 billion and then it's not going to happen. Iran is different from all these other countries. The axis of resistance is different. And people have, I don't want to go into ideology and religion, but I think I told you before, like anyone who reads about Iran going to Tehran, Alice of Crook's book Resistance, I think they'll learn a thing or two about the reality of Iran, and they'll better understand why Iran does this. But it's not just about the Palestinian people and the Lebanese people, which is for Iran key. I mean, without the end to these massacres and war, we're not going to accept an agreement. That's the end of the story. But it's also the fact that if you appease these people, if you appease this ethno-supremacist regime and its ethno-supremacist allies in the United States, they're going to go after you. If you show signs of weakness, they'll come after you. They're not the sort of people who will say, "Okay, they're weak, so let's leave them alone." No, they'll tear you apart, and that's what we saw. That's what we see in Syria. The Jolani regime, they're good at slaughtering Syrians. They've been doing it since 2011, and Iraqis at the behest of foreign Western powers. But when it comes to Israel, everyone is quiet. They're all submissive. Is the Israeli regime withdrawing from all those territories that they've taken during the last year, ever since the fall of the Syrian government? They've taken huge territory, a huge amount of territory in the south, far larger than the Golan Heights. Are they going to return it? Of course not.
Professor Marandi, I mean, I wanted to ask you now about, given you referenced it a bit in terms of the fantasies, the fantasies of the United States around a deal with Iran. And this came out in the media of the king of Hasbara, the king of lies, the Israeli media. But in Khan media, they have reported now that there is some kind of exchange that happened, that up to 3 billion in Iranian assets were transferred from the Qatari banks where they are held illegally and stolen from Iran back to Iran in order to sweeten a kind of coming ceasefire, which Trump has said could happen any day now. But he has said this, and I'll pull it up as you're speaking, 38 times since the April ceasefire began, that there would be a new deal, imminently. And, it just so happens to always come around the time when markets are opening or closing. So, Professor Marandi, your thoughts on this? What is Khan News saying? Did this even happen? Do you have any understanding of what's going on here?
I don't know. I really don't know. I should have asked actually before the show, but I was so busy asking about the helicopter that I forgot about this, because I heard this just an hour ago. I know that a plane from the Emirates came during the war, and people have been asking what is this about, and I'm just as curious as anyone else. But I don't know. I mean, the Emiratis, they have confiscated Iranian assets at the behest of the Americans over the period of time. I don't know if that would be a part of. First of all, I don't even know if this is a true story at all. I don't trust anything from Israel, and so I really can't comment on it. And then if I say, but the thing is that it could be separate from the $24 billion assets that the Iranians demand from the United States, because we haven't been in negotiations with them over this, as far as I know. It may be that the Iranians are demanding compensation from the Emirates for other things that they've done. I have absolutely no idea. I'll try to find out and let you know, and then you can tell your audience if I find out any news. But I mean, the U.S. policy is so U.S. policy is so strange that one day it's leaked that Trump told Netanyahu that you're hated and your country is hated, which I think was probably a true statement. I don't think this was for show, actually, even though usually it is for show. Last time around, now they did the same thing right before the 12-day war, saying that Trump wanted the negotiations and Netanyahu wanted war, and then they carried out the war. That was fake, and with Biden too. But on this occasion, I personally think it's a bit different, because Netanyahu was humiliated, and in the Hebrew press, they attacked him severely after what Trump said. And for this to come out that Israel is hated and so on, that comes at a price. I mean, people across the world heard this. So it's not good for Israel. But I think, and I'm just guessing, and I've said this elsewhere, and I may be wrong, I'm not an expert, but I'm thinking that maybe there are Israeli firsters in the White House, Zionists, and people of influence among the Zionist class that are thinking that Netanyahu should go. And they are perhaps criticizing him and weakening him because they want him to lose the election. Maybe if he goes, they can bring in some genocidal criminal from the opposition, because they're all the same. And the public is genocidal. That's what their own polls show. I mean, it's a country where they celebrate rapists. But maybe they could try to bring in someone else and have a facelift for the Israeli regime, say that it was all Netanyahu's fault and so on. Probably won't work, but some people would be fooled. I think it's gone beyond that.